He didn't rescue her, he transformed her rage into power. From a distance, this looks like a scandalous revenge romance. A discarded woman asks a dangerous man to help her make her ex regret losing her. But beneath that surface lies something much darker. Adrian does not simply give Emily confidence, he teaches her how identity can be reconstructed through pain, performance, and power. What begins as a fake relationship becomes a study of how wounded people mistake danger for freedom, and how love can be born inside violence.
So get this. Emily Carter, hands shaking, marches up to the city's boogeyman with a plan so nuts it's basically a death sentence. Her pitch? Poses her boyfriend at the wedding of the dude who shattered her life. Dumped, shamed, and made to feel worthless, she had one play left. An old family heirloom, a Hail Mary, and a pride that refused to let her get erased. Little did she know that Adrian Moretti, a kingpin ruling an empire of fear, would see himself in her broken eyes, a reflection that would rattle him more than any rival. If you're out there listening, tell me where you're at. I want to know how far Emily's crazy story is reaching tonight. And if you need to find out if she survives this insane choice, smash that like button and stick with me. The Crimson Lounge. This place was never a haven for women on the brink of disaster. It was a predator's playground disguised in fancy decor, with velvet seats worth more than a human life, packed with sharks cutting deals in the dark. In here, you were either with the big dogs, or you were taken out by their muscle. Emily Carter was neither. She hovered by the entrance, clutching her coat in the November cold that had sunk into her soul, feeling the heat of every single stare. A hostess with a perfect spine and a smile that could freeze hell over cut her off, moving like a finely tuned guard dog. "I'm sorry, miss, but this is a private club." Emily's throat felt like sandpaper. She'd run this scene in her head 100 times on the train, but facing the real gatekeeper between her old life and her terrifying future, the words felt cheap. "I have to see Adrian Moretti." The woman's face was a stone mask, but her eyes held a dangerous glint, a clear warning. "Mr. Moretti doesn't see people without an appointment." "I know." Emily's voice was a dead calm whisper, a total lie compared to her heart trying to punch its way out of her chest. "But I have information he needs." No doubt, the hostess's smile turned razor sharp. "And you can leave it with his assistant." Like all the other hopefuls, Emily felt her chance slipping away, that old, heavy feeling of being invisible crashing down on her again. For 3 months, she'd been a ghost, at work, at home, in the life of the man who threw her away like trash. She was so damn tired of being deleted. "Tell him," she said, pulling a small velvet box from her pocket, "that I'm here to make a trade." The hostess's gaze flicked to the case, then back to Emily's defiant expression. A lifetime passed in that silence. Finally, the woman lifted one perfect hand, summoning a shadow from the corner. He appeared out of nowhere, a giant in a suit that probably cost more than her rent. He said nothing, his eyes giving her a cold, clinical once-over that cataloged her entire being. "She says she has something for Mr. Moretti," the hostess announced. The giant held out a hand. After a slight hesitation, Emily handed over the velvet case. He opened it with zero interest, scanned the contents for exactly 3 seconds, and snapped it shut. "Stay here." He disappeared into the club's core, taking her last hope with him, so she waited. The hostess went back to her post, ignoring Emily with the kind of practiced indifference you only see in places that chew up and spit out the desperate for a living. 2 guys swaggered out of the club, their muffled laughter echoing behind them. They smelled like money and expensive cologne, and their eyes looked straight through her as if she wasn't there. Emily started counting her heartbeats. 57 of them went by before the giant returned. "He'll give you 5 minutes." She followed his back down a winding maze of hallways, past doors that hid secrets she was glad she couldn't see. The lounge music faded into a deep, oppressive quiet. He stopped at a plain-looking door, knocked twice, and stepped aside. 5 minutes, he repeated. Emily's hand was already on the knob before her brain caught up to her insane actions. She turned it and went inside. The room was smaller and darker than she'd pictured. Huge windows showed off the city lights, but the room was so dim the skyline looked like a painting far away. There was a desk, 2 chairs, and the man sitting behind it, who didn't even bother to look up when she entered. Adrian Moretti. His face was infamous, a ghost on news pages that everyone knew. But no photo could ever capture the pure weight of his presence, the way the air itself seemed to bend around him. He was about 35, with dark hair that was just a bit too long, chiseled features, and a face that could have been handsome if it wasn't completely empty of any warmth. He set the velvet case on his desk, pushed it toward her, and finally their eyes met. His were the color of rock. Not blue or green, just a flat, dead gray like a winter storm or something that had never seen the sun. "You have 4 minutes left," he said. His voice was a low, controlled rumble with absolutely no curiosity in it. "Make them count." Without waiting for an invitation, Emily took the seat across from him. It was a tiny rebellion, but one she desperately needed. Just to prove to herself she could still make a move, still take up space in a world trying to kick her out. "My name is Emily Carter. 3 months back, my ex-fiancé broke off our engagement for a power marriage his family cooked up." She locked eyes with Adrian, searching for any sign of a reaction. There was nothing. "The wedding is in 2 weeks. I got an invitation. How festive." Adrian's tone was so deadpan he might as well have been talking about the weather. "I don't see what this has to do with me. I need an escort." That finally got a reaction. It was tiny, just the slightest arch of an eyebrow, a move that could mean he was amused or just annoyed. "You want me to be your date for a wedding? I need you to sell the lie that I'm over him, that I wasn't destroyed by what he did, that I'm not the pathetic wreck they all think I am. So your master plan was to waltz into my club, offer a piece of family jewelry to a man you've never met, and just hope I'd say yes." Heat flushed Emily's cheeks, but her gaze didn't break. "My plan was to find the one man who understands what it feels like to be written off. Someone who knows that sometimes survival means you have to create a story so powerful it becomes the truth." And just like that, something changed in Adrian's face. He didn't soften. The guy looked like he was incapable of it. But he was focused now, as if her words landed a punch the ring never could. "You know who I am," he said, not a question but a fact. "I know what's important. Then you know I don't do favors for people who waste my time. This isn't me asking for a favor. This is business." Emily motioned to the case. "My grandmother's ring. It's worth at least 20,000, probably way more. It's yours for one night. That's it. You show up with me, you play your part, and then we're strangers again." Adrian leaned back in his chair, his stare so intense it made her skin crawl. She forced herself to stay perfectly still, to meet his gaze, to pretend she wasn't about to shatter into a million pieces. "What makes you think I'm in the market for a ring?" he finally asked. "Everybody has a price, even you." And what price is that, Miss Carter? Emily paused. This was it. Her last exit ramp. Her chance to say sorry, take her ring, and walk away with what was left of her dignity. But she was already in too deep. She'd already crashed the gate and taken a seat she was never offered. She was going to see this through. I think, she said, weighing every single word, that your entire kingdom is built on image, on fear, on a reputation so total that no one even dreams of challenging you. She let that hang in the air for a second. I think you know more than anyone that the story people believe about you is your most powerful weapon. And me, I need a new story. I need them to see a woman who didn't just get through it, a woman who won. For a long moment, Adrian didn't move. Then he picked up the case, opened it again, and this time he actually studied the ring. It was a simple thing, a gold band with a small sapphire, nothing flashy, an object loved for its story, not its price tag. This wedding, he murmured, his eyes still glued to the ring. The venue, the Belmont estate, about an hour from the city. And the groom's name? Nathaniel Ashford. That name flipped a switch. Adrian's gaze snapped up from the ring, and for the very first time, a flicker of what looked like genuine interest sparked in his eyes. Senator Ashford's son. That's right. And he was your fiancé? For 2 years. Adrian snapped the case shut, setting it down carefully. When he looked at her again, his focus was so sharp, Emily felt like he was peeling back her skin, exposing every secret, every lie, every weakness she had. You want me to walk into a room of power players, society's elite, and men rich enough to make consequences disappear? His voice was dangerously low. You want me to fake a relationship with a stranger, and you want this in 2 weeks, a performance so perfect nobody would ever doubt it. Your payment is this ring, a trinket worth less than what I spend on lunch. Emily's hope collapsed. He was going to say no. The whole idea was insane. She'd made a huge mistake. I accept, Adrian said. Emily just stared. What? I accept, he repeated, but the ring isn't the price. He pushed the velvet box back across the desk to her. You're keeping it. A pawn for the big show? And your price? Adrian prowled around the desk, a predator hiding in plain sight. Pure menace. He stopped just out of reach, making her look up. 2 weeks, he says. That's all he needs to turn her into a showstopper for that wedding. He'll teach her to walk, talk, and make everyone think she didn't just get over her ex, she leveled up. By the end, Nathaniel Ashford will be kicking himself for ever letting her go. But why are you doing this? Adrian's face darkens. Let's just say I know what it's like to be cast aside, and I'm no fan of the Ashfords. He puts his hand out. So, we got a deal? Emily is shook, staring at his hand, staring at him. She came here with a wild plan, expecting to be humiliated. She never thought he'd agree. She never expected this insane spark as he sized her up like a code he had to crack. Every instinct screamed run. She could go back to her quiet apartment, her quiet pain, the misery she'd stewed in for 3 whole months. But Emily Carter was done being quiet. She grabbed his hand. Deal! Adrian's place wasn't a home. It was a freaking sky palace, a glass and steel monument to being too rich. 3 floors of pure, minimalist flex, white walls, black furniture, and art so expensive it would make you sick. Then he drops the bomb. You'll be staying here. Guest quarters are on level 2. Everything you need. Emily literally stopped walking. Excuse me, what? Adrian turned, his face a total blank. For this to work, we have to be convincing. That means you're here, every day, for the next 2 weeks. It's just more efficient. She protests. I have a job, a home. His response, quit or take leave, I don't care. He just keeps walking, expecting her to follow. Forget your flat, you won't have time for it. A cold dread started creeping in. You said you'd train me, not make me your roommate. Adrian just holds a door open for her. Look, Miss Carter, you brought me your problem. I'm offering the solution. You can go to that wedding a broken, furious mess for everyone to see, or you can let me handle this. He tells her if she wants to make Nathaniel Ashford regret his entire existence, she'll trust him. And the worst part? He was right. She walks into a guest room 3 times the size of her apartment. Total 5-star resort vibes. The room was sterile, flawless, perfect. Adrian's voice echoes from the hall. I'll have clothes sent over tomorrow. Rest up. We start at 6. She sputters. 6 in the morning? His comeback is pure ice. Got something better to do. Emily spun around, ready to call this whole insane thing off. But he was already gone, vanished. She was alone in a gilded cage, trying to remember what her life was like just 3 hours ago before she made a pact with a man who treated her like a puzzle to be solved. Then her phone went off. A text from her best friend, Maya. So, did he laugh you out of his office? Emily sat on the bed typing out. He agreed. Maya's reply was instant. What's the catch? And that was the problem. How do you even explain this? That you just agreed to live with a mysterious billionaire for 2 weeks? She was in way over her head, sitting in a penthouse that cost more than she'd ever make. She deleted her reply and just sent, I'll call you tomorrow. It's complicated. She tossed the phone aside and fell back onto a mattress like a cloud. The ceiling was a perfect blank white. No soul, no story. Totally suffocating. She tried to block out Nathaniel's face when he dumped her, his mom telling her to be dignified, or the wedding invitation that came 2 days later with her name, plus, and guest. The cruelty of it all was off the charts. But here, in Adrian Moretti's penthouse, in a deal that felt like both a trap and a lifeline, she felt a new spark. She felt dangerous. 6 a.m. hit like a truck. A sharp, unapologetic knock rattled her door. She stumbled out of bed, still in yesterday's clothes, and opened it to a woman who was not Adrian. This woman was about 50, with her hair in a severe bun and a posture that screamed, "No nonsense!" She scanned Emily from head to toe, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Moretti is waiting for you," she said flatly. "I'm Claudia. I'm the house manager. You have 15 minutes to look presentable." Then she just turned and left. Emily stood there, half asleep, looking down at her own wrinkled, disheveled state. She bolted to the bathroom. 14 minutes later, she walked into a massive dining room. Adrian was at a table fit for 12 people, scrolling his phone, sipping coffee from a cup that probably paid her rent. He glanced up. "You're late. You said 6. It's 6:14. I said 6. He puts his phone down and points to a chair. "Sit." Emily sat down, feeling like she was in the principal's office. Claudia appeared out of nowhere with a plate of perfect-looking food. "Eat," Adrian ordered. "I'm not hungry." His reply was cold. "I don't care. You'll need the fuel." She took a bite, and the whole time he just watched her, analyzing every move with that creepy, intense focus. The staring was getting weird. Finally, he spoke. "Tell me about Nathaniel Ashford." Emily put her fork down. What do you want to know? Everything. How you met, how long, what he wants, what you want, and why he picked someone else. That last part was a gut punch. She could feel her cool facade cracking. His family needed a political alliance, she said, keeping her voice level. I'm just a paralegal. He's marrying a congressman's daughter. It was a logical choice. Logical, Adrian repeated, like the word was disgusting. That's what he called it. And you bought that. Her head snapped up. He wasn't having it. Guys don't end a 2-year relationship for logic. They leave because they're done. I need the real reason. His words hit her hard, a truth she didn't want to face. He said I was too predictable, she whispered. Too settled. He said being with me was like putting on the same comfortable old boots every single day. Basically, she was reliable but boring. No excitement. Adrian's face didn't move, but his eyes lit up. And you let him say that to you? She shot back. What was I supposed to do? Argue? He wasn't wrong, Adrian. I am predictable. I'm the wallpaper while guys like him, guys like you, suck all the air out of the room. Then he asked the one question that changed everything. Then why are you here? She was floored. Because I'm sick of being wallpaper, she whispered. I'm sick of being forgotten. So she knows she looks pathetic, showing up at some rich guy's place with a ring and a wild plan. But hey, she's finally doing something. So Adrian just chills, watching her before dropping a total curveball. He smiles. And listen, this ain't a warm, fuzzy smile. It's got zero comfort. This thing is sharp, cold, and more real than anything he's shown her yet. Perfect, he says. That's the first honest thing you've said. Now eat. We've got a ton of work to do. But the next 2 weeks would be the most brutal of Emily's entire life. Adrian wasn't about to teach her persuasion. He was going to tear down every single defense she had and make her rebuild herself from nothing. First up, her walk. You lead with your shoulders, he calls out on day 1 after she crosses the room for the 10th time. You're apologizing for being alive. Cut it out. She tries to argue, but he's not having it. You're hunched. Your steps are tiny. You're trying to make yourself invisible, and I can see it from here. So Emily straightens up, lifts her chin, and walks again. Better, he says. Now do it again. But this time, act like you own this joint. You're not begging for scraps of attention. She is claiming her territory. Emily walks back and forth until her feet are screaming and her back is protesting, wanting to just yell at him for a break. But Adrian gives her zero rest. He nitpicks every move, fixes every error, and pushes her way past her breaking point. And slowly, almost so you can't see it, things start to change. By the end of week 1, Emily can walk into a room and get noticed without saying a single word. She can hold someone's gaze without flinching. She can stand next to the walking powerhouse that is Adrian and not feel like a total nobody. The second week, he starts working on her mouth. Those wedding guests are gonna try to break you, Adrian says over dinner on night 8. They'll ask questions to humiliate you. They'll throw out fake compliments that are really just knives. She has to learn to block without showing she's been hit. How? She asks. Practice. I'll play Nathaniel's mother. Emily almost laughs out loud. Seriously? He's going to act like the ex's mom? You want me to be Nathaniel instead? The idea of Adrian pretending to be her ex is so ridiculous. Emily actually laughs. Fine. Be the mother. Adrian shifts, and holy crap, his entire presence changes. His posture softens. His face gets this practiced, friendly look that doesn't reach his eyes. When he speaks, his voice is different, smoother, classier. Emily, my dear, what a joy. I had no idea you'd bounce back so fast. You absolutely must tell me about your new friend. The impression is so dead on, Emily's stomach drops. She's heard that exact tone from the real woman 100 times. Sweetness, that's pure poison. He's more than a friend, Emily says, trying to keep her voice steady. We've been seeing each other a while. How sweet, and what does he do? I don't think I know the name Moretti. Is he in finance? Emily freezes. This is the part she was dreading. How does she explain Adrian's job without saying anything? He's in private enterprise, she says carefully. Adrian, still in character, gives a killer smile. How delightfully vague. Well, I'm sure he's loaded to be with you. You always were good at finding men who could provide security. The insult lands exactly as intended, designed to make her feel like a cheap gold digger. But instead of flinching, instead of letting that poison sink in, Emily does something new. She smiles back. Actually, she says, her voice calm and clear, I think you'll find that I'm the one providing the security. Adrian's world can get a little wild. It helps to have someone to keep him grounded. And just like that, Adrian drops the act. His real smile is back. That sharp, cold look that means he's actually impressed. Better, he says. You took the hit and flipped it. You made yourself essential, not just a trophy. You do that every single time they try to put you down. They drilled for hours. Adrian became everyone. Nathaniel's parents, random guests, even Nathaniel himself. He threw every possible scenario at her, every cheap shot, every hidden insult, every trick to make her feel like an outsider. And Emily learned how to fight back. Not with anger, but with a cool confidence that came from knowing she'd survived way worse than these petty people. 3 days before the wedding, Emily barely knew the woman in the mirror. She's standing in her suite, wearing a gown Adrian had custom made for her. It's midnight blue silk, clinging to her like a second skin. She sees a whole new person, someone who stands tall, who takes up space, and who looks like she belongs right beside a man like Adrian Moretti. You're ready, Adrian says from the doorway. Emily turns. He's rocking a perfectly cut tux, looking like he walked straight out of a magazine about billionaires. But it's the look he gives her that stops her cold. Something almost soft in his eyes. Something that looks a lot like pride. Are you sure? She asks. I have zero doubt. He walks over, stopping right in front of her to adjust her necklace, a gold chain with a pendant that matches the ring she gave him. Emily, look at me. She does. When you walk into that party, Adrian says, his voice low, everyone there is going to see what I see. Not Nathaniel Ashford's pathetic ex, not some girl with a chip on her shoulder. They're gonna see the person who already won. Emily's breath catches. How do you know? Because I've spent 2 weeks watching you become her. He steps back, and the moment is gone, replaced by that cool wall Adrian always keeps up. But Emily feels something shift inside her, something dangerous and real. Oh no, she's catching feelings for him, not for the plan or the safety or the glow-up. She's falling for the guy who saw her when she was invisible, who pushed her when she wanted to quit, who saw a queen in her before she ever did. And that's a massive problem because in 3 days she'll walk into that wedding on his arm, play her part, and then it's over. The deal is done. Adrian goes back to his empire, and Emily goes back to her old life. Except now she's stuck with the memory of being someone else, Someone powerful, someone brave, someone who wasn't really her. "Car's here at 3, Adrian says, already heading for the door. "Don't be late." He's gone before she can reply. Emily turns back to the mirror, staring at this new reflection. The dress, the posture, the confidence she wore like armor. She asked Adrian to teach her how to survive in his world. She never thought about the price she'd pay for having to leave it. Wedding day arrives with a flat gray sky threatening rain that never comes. Emily's up before her alarm, her stomach twisted in knots that have nothing to do with food and everything to do with facing the Belmont estate in 6 hours with Adrian Moretti. She stares at the perfect ceiling of her suite, a room that feels more like a stage set than a home. Trying to get her breathing under control, her phone buzzes. It's Maya. "Game time. You got this. Call me the second it's over with all the details." Emily just sends back a thumbs up. Words were too much to handle. She drags herself out of bed and into a scalding hot shower. She lets the water burn, the only thing that feels real, in a morning that seems totally fake. 20 minutes later, wrapped in a ridiculously soft towel, she finds Claudia waiting with a garment bag, looking like Emily was already failing. "The mister wants you downstairs in 30 minutes, Claudia says, hanging the bag. "Hair and makeup are here in 10. I can do my own." Mr. Moretti insists. Of course he does. The next 3 hours are a blur of strangers bossing her around. The hair guy twists her hair into some complicated French thing she'll forget instantly. The makeup artist babbles about palettes and whether her skin tone is cool or warm. Nobody asks how she's doing. Nobody asks if she's terrified. Nobody sees the woman underneath all the product, standing on the edge of a cliff. When they finish, her own reflection is a total stranger. The woman in the mirror is expensive, polished, someone who hangs out with the elite. Not someone who files paperwork in an office that smells like cheap coffee and regret. And check this out. The midnight blue dress Adrienne promised would be perfect was basically shrink-wrapped to her body. The neckline was classy, but the fabric moved like pure liquid night, a low-key flex that screamed it cost more than her ride. She's staring, totally stunned, when his reflection pops up behind hers. He ditched the breakfast casuals for a charcoal gray suit so sharp it looked like battle armor, tailored for a war zone of high society. His dark hair was slicked back. His jaw was razor sharp, clean. The second his eyes met hers in the mirror, a jolt went straight down her spine. "You look perfect," he whispered. "I look like I'm about to have a panic attack." "That too," he admitted. He closed the gap between them, and his cologne hit her. Smelled like dark wood and straight-up danger. "They won't see that. They'll only see the story we're selling." Emily spun around. "What if I blow this?" "You won't. You can't know that for sure." "I do." Adrian's hand went to her necklace, adjusting the pendant just like he did 3 days ago, only this time it felt way more personal. His fingers brushed her collarbone, and her breathing just stopped. "Emily, look at me." She did. "You've spent 2 weeks training for this," Adrian said, his voice a low, solid hum. "You know the protocol? You speak their language. You know exactly how to make Nathaniel Ashford burn with regret. All you have to do is remember this isn't an act. You're just becoming the person you were before you started doubting yourself." "And who's that?" "Someone who doesn't need him anymore." Those words landed like a key turning in a lock that had been rusted shut for years. She desperately wanted it to be true. She needed this woman in the mirror to be the real deal. She needed the confidence she'd been practicing to be her own. Not just some borrowed armor she'd have to give back at midnight, but standing this close to Adrian, feeling the pure force of his focus, Emily couldn't tell what was real anymore. "The car's here," he said, stepping back, and just like that, the charged vibe between them shattered. "You ready?" "Nope, not even a little." "Yes," Emily lied. The trip to the Belmont estate was a full hour of silence on her end, while Adrian took calls in what sounded like Italian. His tone was all business, clipped and final, talking about deals that were clearly top secret. For the last 2 weeks, she'd masterfully dodged asking what Adrian actually did. Not because she wasn't curious, that was buzzing under her skin 24/7. It was because she knew that the more she learned, the harder it would be to walk away when the job was done, and walking away was the whole point of their contract. The estate just appeared out of nowhere, looking like something from another century. Perfect lawns surrounded a mansion that seemed ripped right out of Europe. A long line of flashy, expensive cars was already snaking up the driveway, glinting in the last bit of sunlight. Emily's hand started shaking. Adrian hung up his call, his eyes locking onto hers. "Breathe." "I am breathing." "No, you're hyperventilating. It's not the same." He reached over and took her hand. It was the first time he'd ever touched her outside of their training sessions. His palm was warm, his grip solid, but not crushing. "Emily, here's the plan. We walk in, we get seen, we show them exactly what they need to see, and then we're out. That's it." "What if they ask about us? How we know each other?" "We'll tell them the truth." Emily could do nothing but stare at him. "The truth?" "Not the whole truth, just the parts that get the job done." Adrian's thumb started stroking her knuckles, a move that could have been for comfort or just a total accident. "Introduced by friends, been seeing each other for a few months. We like our privacy. If they push, we pivot. You've run these drills. Drills in a living room are nothing like the real thing, with people literally praying I fail. So don't fail." It sounded so stupidly simple. Just don't fail. Like she could just decide not to fall apart when she saw Nathaniel. Like she could just ignore feeling like a total fake in a borrowed life. But Adrian was still holding her hand, his eyes filled with a certainty she couldn't find anywhere inside herself. So Emily just nodded. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay." The driver opened her door. Adrian got out first, then turned and offered her his hand. She took it, letting him help, not because she needed it, but because it was part of the show, part of the story they were selling. Or at least that's what she told herself. The entrance was a chaotic mess of guests in fancy clothes, trading fake compliments and air kisses. Emily spotted faces she recognized from her life with Nathaniel. All the fundraisers and galas where everyone wore a smile like a mask. The second they started up the steps, the whole vibe shifted. It wasn't subtle at all. Conversations died, and heads snapped in their direction. A whisper started, and then it felt like 100 pairs of eyes were on her, sizing her up, judging her, and basically condemning her before she even got through the door. Her gut screamed at her to shrink, to look down, to disappear. Instead, she threw her shoulders back, her hand locked tight in Adrian's. When they walked in, the energy shift was like a physical blow. People were full-on staring, and then some woman she kind of remembered from Nathaniel's family, an aunt or something, walked up with a smile that was all teeth. "Emily, what a fantastic surprise! We had no idea you were coming." The hidden message was a knife. "You're supposed to be home, crying your eyes out." Emily fired back a smile just as fake. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Just because Nathaniel and I aren't together doesn't mean I don't wish him the best." The woman's eyes flicked over to Adrian, her curiosity practically buzzing. "And you are?" "Adrian Moretti," he said, offering his hand with the chill confidence that said he did this all the time. "A pleasure." The woman shook his hand, her face shifting from curious to suspicious. "Moretti, I know that name. I get that a lot." "And how do you know Emily?" "We met through some mutual friends." Emily jumped in, the practice line rolling off her tongue like she'd said it 1,000,000 times. "A few months back." "How sweet." "Well, I'm sure we'll see you two inside. The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. The woman was gone before they could even answer, already turning to whisper to her friend. Emily let out a long, slow breath. That wasn't so bad. "That was just the opening act," Adrian said quietly. "The real test starts when you see him." Emily had been blocking that thought out, refusing to picture seeing him after 3 months of total, brutal silence, what he'd look like, or if he'd even pretend she existed. They stepped into the main hall, which had been completely decked out to look like a spread from some wedding magazine. Flowers everywhere, perfect rows of white chairs, and a candle count that was definitely a fire hazard. People were already finding their seats, their low chatter filling the massive room. Emily and Adrian snagged seats near the back, far enough to fly under the radar, but not so far that it looked like they were hiding. Strategic placement, another one of Adriana's lessons. The ceremony kicked off right on time. The music started. The bridesmaids, all in matching lavender dresses, began their walk. And then boom, there was Nathaniel at the front of the room, looking exactly like the guy Emily remembered. Tall, handsome in that basic way with his blonde hair and blue eyes, and flashing a smile that was probably a killer with voters and donors, anyone who didn't know the snake behind it. He was using that exact smile now, eyes glued to the aisle waiting for his bride. A knot tightened in Emily's stomach. It wasn't sadness. She was way past that. This was something else, like looking at an old picture of someone you didn't even recognize anymore. The bride appeared, and the groom did that cheesy, sharp intake of breath. She was gorgeous in that perfect, polished way of political daughters, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Emily's entire student loan debt. She floated down the aisle with military precision, her smile locked in place. When she got to Nathaniel, he grabbed her hand like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. And maybe he had. Adrian's hand found Emily's under her dress, his fingers lacing with hers in a way that was starting to feel weirdly normal and real. She squeezed back. The ceremony was exactly what Emily expected. Boring, traditional, and full of promises of love that sounded totally fake, coming from two people sealing a political deal, not a real relationship. The officiant talked about partnership and choosing to love each other every day. Emily found herself wondering if Nathaniel and his new wife even chose each other, or if their whole life was scripted by parents and advisors who cared more about image than happiness. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, the room went dead silent, like tons of people were thinking it, but nobody was dumb enough to actually say it. Emily stayed quiet. 20 minutes later, the whole charade was over. Nathaniel kissed his wife. The crowd clapped, and the happy couple walked back up the aisle while a string quartet played some song Emily vaguely knew from a movie she'd forgotten. As he passed their row, Nathaniel's eyes locked directly onto hers. For a hot second, everything stopped. He locked eyes with her, then Adrian, and you could see the shock. Emily wasn't a wreck, she was composed, a total queen. Something flashed across his face. Surprise? Respect? Who knows? Then, poof, he was gone, smiling at the next guest. Emily finally breathed out. Adriana whispered, "You good?" Not even close. The reception was in a ballroom that made the first hall look like a closet. We're talking crystal chandeliers, massive garden views, and plates that cost more than Emily's rent. The whole room was a shrine to white and gold, just to remind everyone they were insanely rich. Emily and Adrian got stuck at a table in the boonies, far from the main action but still totally visible. Another one of Adrian's power plays. Everything with him was a calculated move. Their table mates were randoms who gave polite nods but zero conversation. Emily was thankful. She was already running on fumes and couldn't fake another smile. Food just started appearing, course after course. Emily just poked at her plate, heart thumping, feeling the eyes from other tables as people leaned in to gossip. "They're staring," she whispered. "Let 'em," Adrian shot back, taking a sip of wine like it was nothing. "That's the entire plan. I thought the plan was showing Nathaniel I was over him. It is. And part of being over him is owning their gossip. Let them wonder who you are now, who I am, and what we're even doing here." He put his glass down, his eyes locking on hers. Want to know what they're thinking? Probably not. They're thinking you've leveled up, that you're with some mystery man, and that maybe they got you all wrong. His voice was a low hum, just for her. They're thinking Nathaniel Ashford might have just made a colossal mistake. Emily wanted so badly to believe the whispers were about her new power, not her nerve for even showing up. But after years of being invisible, she couldn't believe anyone was really looking now. The band started up for the first dance, a perfectly choreographed number by the bride and groom. After that, the floor opened up. Music blasted through the giant room. People started swaying. From her seat, Emily watched, trying to stop her hand from shaking. Adrian stood and offered his hand. "Dance with me." It wasn't a question. Emily looked up at this guy, the one who'd spent 2 weeks turning her into someone else, and felt total panic. "I don't think this was in the training manual. We practiced in your apartment. Now we're live with a full audience. So, dance with me." She took his hand. Saying no would have been a bigger scene. Adriana led her to the floor, smooth as ever, finding a spot right in the middle, prime viewing real estate. His hand landed on her waist, hers on his shoulder, and just like that, they were moving to a song she couldn't even hear over her own pulse. "You're tense," Adrian pointed out. "I'm petrified. Of this, of everyone staring, of—" She stopped herself before thinking it. "Of falling for you and forgetting this is all an act." He pulled her a tiny bit closer, closing the gap until she could feel his body heat through her dress. "You know what I see when I look at you? Someone faking it till they make it. I see someone who stopped faking it about 3 days ago." His voice was quiet, intimate, and sent shivers down her spine. "You're still waiting for permission to be the person you already are, Emily. Nobody's going to give it to you. You have to take it." Before she could answer, she saw them, Nathaniel and his new wife, dancing way too close for comfort. She didn't want to hear them, but Nathaniel's eyes found hers anyway, holding on for a beat too long. "He's watching," Adrian murmured. "I know." How does that feel? Emily actually had to think about it. A month ago, that look would have crushed her, leaving her humiliated on the shiny dance floor. But now, in Adrian's arms, wearing a dress worth a car, she felt something totally different. A whole lot of nothing. No victory, no satisfaction, not even anger. Just a complete void. "It feels like I'm looking at a stranger," she finally answered. Adrian's hand on her waist squeezed just a little. "Good." They got through 2 more songs before Emily had to tap out. She excused herself to the terrace, stepping into the crisp autumn night air. The gardens were lit up with fairy lights, casting a warm glow. She had about 30 seconds of peace before someone joined her, but it wasn't Adrienne. "Emily." She turned, and there he was, Nathaniel, for the first time in 3 months. He looked the same, sounded the same, and even had that same fake warm smile he always used, the one that never quite hit his eyes. "I wasn't sure you'd actually show," he said. Emily looked him dead in the eye. "You sent me an invite." "I know, I just figured you wouldn't want to." "Why wouldn't I want to come?" That question seemed to throw him. "Emily, I'm the one who called off our wedding." "I picked someone else. Most women in your shoes would have torched the invitation. I'm not most women. Nope." His eyes darted back to the ballroom, probably looking for the new wife. "No, you're not. You're different." "Thanks." That wasn't a compliment, he shot back. A chill ran down her spine. "Then what was it?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "An observation. You show up with a stranger, wearing a dress that costs a fortune, acting like our 2 years together meant nothing. It's troubling." "Troubling? Yeah, I'm worried about you, Mem. I can't let you make some grief-fueled mistake you'll regret." That nickname. M. The one he always used. It hit her like a punch to the gut. She'd forgotten how he could wrap condescension up in a blanket of fake kindness, the way he twisted concern into judgment. "I appreciate the thought," Emily said, her voice solid as a rock. "But I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. And you? You seem pretty desperate to make a statement." "I just want to be sure you're not getting into trouble." "Trouble? Adrian Moretti?" Nathaniel said the name like it was toxic. "Do you have any clue who that guy is? Or what he can do?" "I know exactly who he is." "Then you know he's not someone you should be around." "Emily, you're a paralegal. You're not equipped to handle a man like that." It was so typically Nathaniel, so sure of himself, so certain he knew what was best for her, that she almost laughed out loud. This was the man she was supposed to marry, standing here on his wedding day, telling her she was too weak to choose her own company. "You're right," Emily said quietly. "I'm not equipped to handle someone like Adrian, but maybe that's the whole point. Maybe for 2 years, I was exactly the woman you wanted. Predictable, safe, and completely vanilla. And look where it got me. So now I'm trying something new. I'm picking a different lane, and I don't need your approval anymore." His face went rigid. "I'm just trying to help you." "No, you're trying to clear your conscience because I didn't fall apart when you left. You wanted me to be a wreck. You needed me to cry to prove you mattered." Emily stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. "But I didn't. I'm here. I'm fine. And that fact is absolutely killing you." "That's not true." "It is. And for that, I'm actually grateful. If you hadn't dumped me, I might never have realized how small I'd made myself to fit into your world. How much I gave up to be your perfect girl instead of my own person. So, thank you, Nathaniel. Thanks for picking someone else. You did me a huge favor." She turned to leave, but his hand shot out and grabbed her arm. "Emily, wait. Let her go." Adrian's voice cut through the dark like a blade. He just appeared from the shadows, fast enough to have seen the whole thing. He wrapped his hand around Nathaniel's wrist, not violently, but with a kind of pressure that made him let go immediately. "We were just talking," Nathaniel choked out, his face going pale as he tried to look tough. And now, the conversation's over. Adrian's voice was still low. It didn't need to be loud. The threat was baked into every word, into the way he stood between them. "You should get back to your wife. She must be wondering where you went." Nathaniel looked like he wanted to argue, but then he saw the look in Adrian's eyes, a promise of pure violence, and he backed down. He flinched, straightened his suit, and forced a pained smile. "Enjoy the rest of your night," he said to Emily before turning and walking away fast. He vanished into the crowd, and Emily's knees just gave out. Adrian was there instantly, his grip solid on her arms. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. "No, I'm fine. He just startled me." "He touched you. I don't care what he intended." Adrian's voice was low, controlled, but laced with a new kind of venom Emily had never heard. It was possessive, fiercely protective, and straight up lethal. "Nobody lays a hand on you without permission, ever." She stared up at him, the guy who'd agreed to a crazy fake pact, which was suddenly feeling way too real as the walls around her heart started to crumble. "Adrian, we're leaving now." "What? The party just got started." "The party is over." His tone was final. "You showed up. You proved you're past him. You hit Nathaniel Ashford with the truth. Mission accomplished." He grabbed her hand, already striding toward the door. "We're getting out of here before I do something that makes tomorrow's news." Emily didn't fight it. She let him pull her through the massive hall, right past the clueless guests and all the hollow, glittering scenery. They were in the car in less than 5 minutes, and as they peeled out of the Belmont estate, Emily could finally breathe again. She watched out the back window as the estate became a speck of light, a world she almost belonged to, and felt that last connection to Nathaniel Ashford snap for good. It was done. Actually over. She'd survived. Adrian was on his phone, spitting sharp, transactional Italian. Emily watched him in the dim light, seeing the hard set of his jaw, the way it clenched at bad news, the raw power simmering in every move. This was the real Adrian Moretti, not the patient coach of the last 2 weeks, not the charming guy from the dance floor. This was the architect of empires built on loyalty, fear, and calculated risks. Emily had agreed to one night in his world, except it didn't feel like one night anymore. It felt like a line had been crossed that she could never uncross. She asked him to make her tough, and he delivered. But she never guessed that thriving in his reality meant she could never go back to her own. 30 minutes later, the car stopped at his building. He ended the call and turned to her, his face a mask. "Thank you," Emily whispered, "for everything, for—" "Don't thank me yet." Something in his voice made her heart hammer against her ribs. "What do you mean?" Adrian just looked at her for a long, heavy second, some unreadable emotion flickering in his eyes. Then he got out and held the door for her. "Come upstairs," he said. "We need to talk." Her hands were still shaking as they rode the elevator up. She clutched them together, watching the floors climb, hyper-aware of his silent, imposing presence. The vibe between them had shifted, now charged with something that wasn't there just 2 hours ago. Or maybe it had been, and she'd just been too busy trying to survive to notice. The elevator opened directly into his penthouse. He walked in first, shrugging off a jacket that probably cost $5,000 and tossing it on a chair. Emily followed, feeling completely lost in a place she knew but had never felt welcome in. "Drink?" Adrian asked, already at the bar. "I probably shouldn't." It wasn't a question. He poured 2 glasses of a dark amber liquid, walked over and put one in her hand. "Sit down before you fall down." Emily sank onto the edge of the sofa, grateful for the command to stop pretending she was okay. Her feet were throbbing after 6 hours in those heels. Her head was pounding from the pins in her hair. But underneath all that was a soul-deep exhaustion, the kind you only get from watching the man you loved marry someone else while you act like you don't care. She sipped the drink. The burn was sharp and grounding. Adrian stood staring out the huge windows at the city lights. Sometime during the night, he'd loosened his tie and the top button of his shirt. Emily's eyes got stuck on that sliver of skin at his throat before she yanked her gaze away. "You were magnificent tonight," he said quietly, his back still turned. "I didn't do anything but pray I wouldn't faint." "You faced the man who broke you and told him you were whole. You danced while a whole room waited for you to fall apart. You kept your head up when every instinct was screaming to run." He turned to face her. "That is not nothing, Emily." "It felt like nothing. It felt like I was a fraud in someone else's body." "That's because you're still waiting for permission to own your own life." Adrian took a sip, his stare feeling like a physical touch. "When are you going to get that the woman you've been for 2 weeks isn't an act? This strength isn't something I loaned you. It is you. It's who you were before Nathaniel Ashford taught you to be small." Emily put her glass down, her hand shaking. "You can't know that." "I can, because for 14 days I've watched you fight yourself. I've watched you apologize for taking up space, for having an opinion, for just being here like you were trespassing. And every time I had to remind you that you don't need permission, that you were already enough." He moved, sitting on the coffee table right in front of her. "Do you see the difference between you and Nathaniel's new wife?" Emily could only shake her head, her voice gone. "She knows she has value not because she's better, but because nobody ever succeeded in convincing her she was worthless. And that, Emily, can be you. You can walk through this world like you own it, but you have to stop looking to other people for approval." His words hit her like a punch to the gut. Something cracked open deep inside her, a place that had been walled off since Nathaniel left. Tears burned her eyes and she fought them back. "I don't know how," she whispered. "Yes, you do. You just proved it. Now you just keep going." Adrian reached out, gently tucking a curl behind her ear, the tenderness so shocking it broke every rule she thought he lived by. His hand stayed there, his thumb brushing her jaw, and Emily's breath caught. This was dangerous territory. This closeness, this spark jumping between them had zero to do with their deal, and everything to do with the fact that she'd spent 14 days falling for a man who was supposed to be a tool. And then his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. Adrian pulled his hand back, his face shifting from gentle to guarded in a millisecond. He checked the screen, and his jaw locked tight. "I have to take this," he said, already on his feet. "Stay put." He stormed into his office, a flood of sharp Italian pouring out before the door even shut. Emily was left in the huge, silent room, her heart racing, trying to process what almost happened. She grabbed her glass and downed the rest in one fiery gulp that she welcomed. Then she got up, kicked off her heels, and headed for the guest room. She had to get out of this dress, scrub her face, let her hair down. She had to find herself again, even if she wasn't sure who that was anymore. The guest suite was an island of cold, sterile perfection, exactly as she'd left it. In the full-length mirror, a stranger stared back at Emily. The woman was still polished, someone who could navigate a gala with ease, but there was a new glint in her eyes, something that looked like resolve. Her hand was on the zipper of her dress when a shout sliced through the penthouse's supposedly soundproof walls. Emily froze, her fingers stuck as she listened. The yelling continued. It was Adrian's voice, furious and commanding in that same rapid-fire Italian he used on calls. But this time, there was a new layer she'd never heard, a raw, ragged edge that sounded like fear. Before she could stop herself, Emily snuck out of the suite and crept toward Adrian's office. The door was cracked open. Through the gap, she saw him pacing, phone clamped to his ear. His other hand was raking through his hair, the move of a man whose control was shredding. He barked an order into the phone. Emily didn't know Italian, but she knew that tone. It screamed that someone had made a colossal screw-up. He ended the call by slamming his phone on the desk and just stood there, braced against the wood, vibrating with tension. Emily knew she should have backed away, gone to her room and played dumb. Instead, she pushed the door open. Adrian's head snapped up. For a split second, she saw something primal in his eyes, rage, desperation, and something darker that froze her blood. Then the indifferent mask slammed back down. "I told you to wait in the living room. I heard yelling. And you decided to walk toward the sound of the explosion. I thought you might need—" Her voice died. "I don't know what." Adrian let out a laugh with no humor in it. "What I need is for people to follow a simple order." And then he's all, "My problems need to stay buried, not pop back up." He stops himself and tells her to hit the hay. But she pushes, asking what's up. He hits her with the "stay in your lane" talk. "Adrian, I said it's nothing." He goes full ice mode. "This is business. Stop looking at me like we're—" But he can't finish. "Like we're what?" she whispers, and he drops the bomb. "Like any of this is real." Total gut punch, but she holds his stare. "It feels real," she fires back. He goes on the attack. "You just need a hero, and I messed up letting you think it was me." Adrian starts pacing, creating distance. "This isn't real life. You had a problem. I fixed it. Deal's over. We go our separate ways." She echoes his words. "The transaction is complete." Totally stunned. "Yup. You went to the wedding, got your revenge, we're done." "That's it? That's it?" He won't even look at her, just stares past her, completely blank. "You can stay tonight, but you're gone tomorrow. So back to my old life." It hits her like a truck. "You're booting me out." He tries to spin it. "I'm just following the contract." She's not having it. "Really? 'Cause it feels like you're ditching me now that it's messy." "It's not messy. It was always temporary." And she just blurts it out. "Liar." She calls his bluff. "You're lying to me or yourself, and you know you felt something tonight." But he goes full robot. "I felt nothing." Then he twists the knife, saying she's just making stuff up because she's desperate. Then the final blow. "I won't be your next mistake, Emily." Absolute savagery. She's standing there, a queen he created, and he just burns it all down. But check this out. She rallies. "You're right," she says, dead calm. "You're way worse than Nathaniel. At least he was straight up about it." Then she turns and walks out on him. She gets to her room, stone-faced, shuts the door, and then the dam breaks. She completely falls apart. She's crying for her lost future with Nathaniel. She's crying for the invisible girl she used to be just 2 weeks ago. But mostly she's crying for Adrian, the guy who built her up just to tear her down the second things got real. No sleep for her. She's just lying there in the dark. And then around 2 or 3 a.m., she hears his footsteps stop right outside her door. He just stands there for a minute before walking away. Plot twist. She wonders if he's having a rough night too. Morning comes and Emily packs up like a machine. She leaves all the new clothes and expensive jewels behind. All she takes is her own stuff, including the ring Adrian rejected. On her way out, Claudia pops up, looking flawless as ever. "Mr. Moretti sent a car for you." Emily shuts it down. "Nope, I'll take the subway." He insists. She looks the housekeeper dead in the eye. "Tell Mr. Moretti that their deal is done, and she wants nothing from him." She doesn't even wait for a reply, just bounces. The 40-minute subway ride home is a blur. She just stares at her reflection, watching her 2-week transformation from zero to hero and back to zero play out. Her old apartment is exactly as she left it. A total mess, like a snapshot of her old pathetic life, complete with the smell of 3-week-old takeout. It felt like trying on clothes that are way too small now. She drops her bag and crashes on the couch. Right on cue, her phone buzzes. It's Maya, dying for the deets. But how do you even explain the last 14 days? How do you text, "I made a deal with a formidable man, won everything, and then lost it all"? She types and deletes a bunch of times before just sending, "It's done. I'll call you later." She spends the rest of the day trying to be her old self, but it's not working. She does laundry, cleans the kitchen, even opens her laptop to a mountain of work emails, but has zero energy for it. No matter what, her brain keeps replaying Adrian, how he looked at her like she was precious, then pushed her away like she was poison, and how she totally fell for him. As night falls, she gets it. The old Emily is gone for good, not because of him, but because she finally saw what she was worth. She can't stay stuck on some dude who made it crystal clear he doesn't want her. Time to level up. She's got to use what Adrian taught her to build her own empire. First step, quitting the dead-end job where she was invisible for 3 years. As she's typing her resignation, her phone rings. Blocked number. She almost rejects it, but something makes her pick up. Emily Carter. A strange guy's on the line. "Who's this?" "Name's Marco. I work for Adrian Moretti. He told me to call." Her heart just stops. Why? "There's been an incident. He wants you to know people might ask you about last night." "If they do, you call this number immediately and say nothing." "What kind of incident?" "Can't say. But Mr. Moretti is making your security his top priority." Her security? A chill runs down her spine. What does that even mean? It means watch your back. If anyone's following you or asking questions, you call us. Got it? Marco, what the hell is going on? But he's already hung up. She's just frozen there on her couch, trying to process this bombshell. Your security is a top priority. This is so not over. Whatever shady business Adrian is in, the kind that makes you scream in Italian at 2 a.m, has her trapped now. One night in his world, and she's caught in the crossfire. Her hands are shaking, but she's not scared. She's pissed. Adrian kicks her out, says the deal is done, then sends his goons to drop these vague warnings on her. He put her in danger without even telling her the stakes. Oh, if he thinks she's just gonna hide in her apartment and wait, He is dead wrong. Emily grabs her stuff and storms out. No plan, no script, just a destination. She heads straight for the Crimson Lounge. It looks different in the daylight, less cool. She walks up to the same hostess from 3 weeks ago. The hostess recognizes her instantly. "Miss Carter, I need to see Adrian. He's not seeing anyone today." "I don't care. Tell him I'm here." "Sorry, not possible." "Tell him," Emily shot back, her voice laced with a newfound steel, "that if he doesn't see me right now, I'm marching into that ballroom and asking some very loud questions about what kind of business needs safety briefings for its crew." "I bet your other clients would find that fascinating." The hostess kept her poker face, but you could see the "oh crap" moment flicker in her eyes. It was either respect or the sudden realization Emily wasn't bluffing. "Please wait here," she said, before ghosting through the doors. Emily stood there, heart hammering, fully expecting Adrian to tell her to get lost. But 5 minutes later, the same guard from her first visit appeared, waving her in. The walk to Adrian's office was a total head trip, both familiar and totally alien. Emily had made this trip before, but last time she was a desperate, broken version of herself. This time, she was just royally ticked off. The guard knocked twice on the door and then bailed. Emily didn't bother waiting for a welcome. She slammed the door open and stormed in. Adrian was posted up by the window, same as last night, staring out at the city like some kind of gothic hero. He didn't even turn around. "You shouldn't have come here," he said flatly. "I got a weird call from a guy named Marco. Said my security was a top priority. Care to explain what that's about?" "It's about exactly what he said." Not a good enough answer. "It's the only one you're getting." Emily stalked across the room until she was right behind him, close enough to see his ghost of a reflection in the glass. The guy looked wrecked, beyond wrecked, like he hadn't slept a wink, like he'd just spent the whole night fighting demons nobody else could see. "What happened at the wedding?" she demanded. "Nothing that concerns you." Marco seemed to think it did. Marco was being careful. "Adrian, stop." Emily moved to get in his face, forcing him to look at her. "Stop treating me like I'm some fragile doll you have to hide from the world. You spent 2 weeks teaching me how to be tough, how to face my fears, how to own a room. Don't you dare stand there now and tell me to run home and pretend none of this is happening." Adrian's jaw went tight. "You have no idea what you're asking. Then make me understand." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because the less you know, the safer you are from all this." A sharp, bitter laugh exploded from Emily. "That's rich, coming from the guy who literally dragged me into this nightmare. You put me in this game, Adrian. The second you agreed to take me to that wedding, the second you coached me on how to walk and talk and act like I belong, you made me part of whatever this is. So don't act like you're protecting me by icing me out. You're just protecting yourself." "You're right." Adrian's voice was dead, totally flat. "I am protecting myself? Because letting you get any closer would be the stupidest move I could possibly make." "Why?" "Because every single person I let into my life ends up dead or gone or wishing they'd never even met me. Because this world, the one you think is so glamorous, absolutely destroys people. And you've been destroyed enough for one lifetime." His raw honesty hit her like a punch to the gut, leaving her speechless. She really looked at him then, truly saw past the designer suits and the controlled danger and the fortress he'd built around his heart. She saw the man underneath it all, the guy who helped a total stranger because he knew what it felt like to be invisible. The guy who spent 2 weeks training her to survive. Because deep down, maybe he was still trying to figure out how to survive himself. What happened at the wedding? She asked again, her voice way softer this time. Adrian turned away, pressing his hands against the cold window frame. For a long, heavy moment, he just stood there in silence. Then finally, he dropped the bomb. Someone tried to kill me. The words landed on Emily with the force of a physical blow. What? Not at the ceremony, after when we were leaving. A car followed us from the estate. 3 guys. They would have finished the job if my driver hadn't been on his game and swerved onto another road. He met her eyes in the window's reflection. That phone call I got when we came back. That was my security chief. He told me they found the men who were sent. Told me someone put a price on my head so high it's making people sloppy. But you're okay. I'm unharmed. You're unharmed. Everyone is unharmed, he bit out, his voice dripping with venom. But now the person who ordered the hit knows I was at that party. Knows you were with me, which makes you their leverage. Emily felt her knees start to shake. Leverage. A weak spot they could press. A person they could break to get to him. Adrian finally turned to look her dead in the eye. That's why Marco called. That's why I told you to get out of here. Because the moment you stepped into my world, you got a target painted on your back and I can't. His voice cracked. I can't protect you when standing next to me is what puts you in the crosshairs. So I'm just supposed to go home and hope they forget about me? Yes. And if they don't, you'll just handle it. Emily just shook her head in disbelief. Do you really think I'm going to cower in my apartment waiting for you to clean up this mess? After everything you've taught me, you think I'm just going to go back to being a ghost? That is exactly what I think, he shot back. Because the alternative is watching you get hurt because of me, and I will not let that happen. You don't get to make that choice for me. I do, when it's my war that's putting you in danger. Emily stepped right up to him, so close she could see the absolute exhaustion in his eyes, the tension locking up his shoulders, the pure willpower holding him together. Tell me one thing, she said quietly. When you kicked me out last night, was it really because our deal was done, or were you already trying to protect me from this? Adrian said nothing. He didn't have to. The answer was all over his face. I'm not leaving, Emily declared. I'm not going back to my apartment to hide. I refuse to pretend the last 2 weeks didn't happen. You pulled me into your world, Adrian, and now I'm your problem. Emily, no! You don't get to push me away for my own good. You don't get to decide I'm too weak to handle what's coming. I'm standing in your office knowing someone tried to murder you, and I am not running. So either you tell me everything, or I'm walking out that door and finding someone who will. For a long second, Adrian just stared at her, completely floored. Then, the impossible happened. A smile cracked his face. It was that same sharp, dangerous smile from their first meeting, but this time it had something like warmth in it. You're completely out of your mind, he said. I had a great teacher. He shook his head, but Emily could see his resolve starting to crumble. You could almost see the gears turning in his head, calculating the odds, weighing the insane risks of letting her in against the consequences of pushing her out. Finally, he spoke. If I tell you, if I pull you all the way into this mess, there is no going back. You get that, right? I get it. You will know things that make you an accomplice. You'll be just as much a part of this as I am. Good. Adrian closed the distance between them in 2 strides. His hand came up to her jaw, his thumb tracing her cheekbone, just like the night before. Last chance to run, he murmured, his voice low. Emily locked eyes with him. I'm not running. Then you stay glued to my side, because things are about to get incredibly dangerous, and I need to know you're ready. I am ready. We'll see. He dropped his hand and went to his desk, grabbing a phone to make a call. The second someone picked up, he launched into rapid-fire Italian, definitely orders, judging by the tone. He hung up and looked at her. Marco is bringing your things from your apartment. You're staying here until this is done. Adrian, it's not a negotiation. If you're in, you play by my rules. And rule number 1 is you do not leave my sight until I know you're safe. Emily had to swallow the urge to argue. She wanted to scream that she didn't need a babysitter, that she could take care of herself. But the truth was, she was stepping into a world she knew nothing about. She had no clue who wanted Adrian dead, or why, or what they'd do if they found out about her. So she just gave a single nod. Okay. Adrian watched her for another moment, then said, You asked about the wedding. The truth is, I've been locked in a war with another organization for about a year. The usual crap? Turf disputes, disagreements over business practices. But it's escalated lately. They started hitting my people, and I hit back. Last night was a message from them to show that nowhere is off limits, not even a senator's kid's wedding. And now they know about me. Now they know I had a date. It's not clear if they know who you are or what you are to me, but I'm not taking any chances. What you are to me. The phrase just hung there in the air between them, louder than any shout. What's the next move? Emily asked, breaking the silence. The next move? We end this. I find the person who gave the order. I make them understand what happens when they go after what's mine. And I will finish this war before anyone else gets hurt. How? Adrian's smile turned absolutely predatory. By doing what I do best, making people regret the day they ever underestimated me. He walked past her toward the door, then paused and looked back. You sure about this, Emily? 'Cause the second we step out, the show's over and this whole thing gets real. Emily pictured her tiny, suffocating apartment. She saw the law firm, where she was a nobody for 3 years. She pictured the fake life she built that never felt real. Then she thought about the last 2 weeks of actually living, of facing Nathaniel and feeling nothing, and of falling for a dangerous man who saw the real her. I'm certain, she said. Adrian held out his hand. She took it, and they walked straight into a war. The war room, as Adrian called it, was in the basement of the Crimson Lounge, a secret spot she never knew existed until he led her to a service elevator, needing a key card and a fingerprint just to get in. The room was pure concrete and steel, walls lined with screens showing security feeds from like a dozen spots across the city. 3 dudes were already there, and they clammed up the instant Adrian walked in with Emily. Marco was easy to pick out. He stepped forward immediately, glancing at Emily with obvious concern before locking onto Adrian. Boss, he said, we got a situation. Adrian didn't flinch. When don't we? He walked to the main monitor. What am I looking at? Security feed from the Belmont place. This was last night about 20 minutes after you left. Marco tapped a key and the camera zoomed in on the parking lot. 3 guys were chilling near a black sedan, just talking. One of them whips out a phone, makes a call, and then all three jump in the car and peel out. They're the same crew that was tailing you. We followed their ride to a warehouse on the east side. By the time our team rolled up, they were ghosts. But you got something! We confirmed they were there, and we found this. Marco slid Adrian a folder, surveillance photos. Looks like they've been on you for at least 2 weeks. Adrian opened it, his expression a total blank as he flipped through what looked like dozens of pictures. Emily couldn't see them clearly, but she caught glimpses. Adrian leaving the Crimson Lounge. Adrian hopping into his car. Adrian walking into his building. Adrian with Emily. There were no less than 4 photos of them together, on their way to the wedding, strolling the Belmont grounds, dancing, and one shot taken right through his penthouse window, showing them in the living room the night they got back. Emily's stomach hit the floor. They were watching us. They were watching me, Adrian corrected, his voice like a razor. You were just collateral. Same thing! Emily moved closer, peering over his shoulder. In every single photo, she was completely oblivious, smiling, talking, living in his world with zero clue that some creep was documenting her every move. How long have they been doing this? Long enough to map your whole life, home, work, who you talk to. Marco's voice was sorry, but straight to the point. My apologies, Miss Carter. We didn't know they'd widened their net until we got these. Who are they? Emily demanded. Who is running this operation? The 3 guys exchanged a look. Adrian set the folder down and faced her. His name is Vincent Calabrese. He owns the East Side, gambling, protection rackets, some import business that's definitely not on the level. We had a truce for years. He stayed on his side of town. I stayed on mine. Everybody made money. Adrian's jaw clenched. 6 months ago, that truce went up in smoke. One of his crews crossed into my territory, started leaning on businesses under my protection. I made it clear that was a no-go. He made it clear he didn't care. Things got worse. How much worse? People got hurt. Property was wrecked. Lines were crossed that should have been sacred. Adrian met her eyes. I'm not going to lie to you, Emily, and say I'm some angel in all this. I've hit Calabrazzi's operation hard, but what he's done is way worse. And now he thinks the way to win is to make this personal? Coming after me at a wedding, a place I thought was safe, filled with civilians and politicians. Adrian's voice dropped to absolute 0. That was not how things were done. There was a code, rules carved in stone you never broke, and this guy had shattered every single one. The words hit Emily hard as she tried to square the image of her mentor with this man talking about turf wars and rules written in blood. What's your next move? She whispered. To finish it. Adrian's attention snapped to Marco. Do we have a fix on Calabrazzi? He's been a ghost using a network of safe houses gone by morning. But we have a good feeling about tomorrow night. Marco threw a new image on the screen. A single warehouse in a dead industrial park. A big shipment's coming in. High-value merchandise he'll want to see for himself. Our guy puts him there between 8 and midnight. And this informant is legit? As they come. He's one of Calabrazzi's own guys, a lieutenant who's sick of how things are being run. Adrian stared at the grainy photo, thinking, how many men will be with him? Our best guess is 10, maybe 12, not including the muscle already there for the drop. We'll be outnumbered then. We are always outnumbered. That's never stopped us. A cruel grin touched Adrian's lips, all hunter. Prep everyone. I I want full combat gear, non-lethal when possible, and eyes on all exits. If Calabresi even thinks about running, I want to know before his hand hits the door handle. And Miss Carter?" Emily's voice sliced through the tension before Adrian could answer. "I am going with you." 4 pairs of eyes snapped to her. Adrian's expression went from battlefield general to pure disbelief. "That is not happening. You told me I was involved. That means I don't sit in your tower while you fight my battles." "That is exactly what it means." "No, it means I choose for myself what I'm willing to face." Emily crossed her arms, her stare locked on his. "You're going after the man who tried to kidnap you, the psycho who's been stalking us for 2 weeks. I have a right to be there when this ends." "You have a right to keep breathing, which you won't be if you wander into a firefight with professional killers." "Then show me how to survive." For a long, dead silent moment, Adrian just stared. Then he looked at Marco. "Leave us." Marco and his crew were gone in a flash, the door clicking shut. The silence was crushing. "Emily," Adrian's voice was barely controlled. "I get why you want in on this. I see that you feel like you're owed some kind of payback or closure or whatever you think you'll find out there. But this isn't the wedding. This is not some party where the worst thing that happens is a nasty comment. People are going to get hurt, maybe killed, and my focus has to be on ending the threat, not making sure you don't catch a stray bullet." "I understand that." "Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you're treating this like some kind of adventure, and you have no clue how deadly this is." The words hit her like a slap. The old Emily would have folded, apologized, and made herself small, but 2 weeks with him had taught her to fight back. She wasn't about to stop now. "I am not treating this like an adventure," she said, her voice low. "I'm treating it like the consequence of my choice. I chose to come to you. I chose to be your date at that wedding. I chose to be here now instead of running home. And I am choosing to see this through, not for a cheap thrill, but because hiding while you clean up my mess is not who I am anymore." "This is not your mess." "It became my mess the second those photos were taken. The second Calabresi decided I was a tool to use against you." Emily stepped closer, close enough to see the exhaustion etched on his face. "You can't shield me by locking me away, Adrian. You can only shield me by arming me. So I'm asking you, arm me." Adrian's eyes slid shut. For a second, he looked way older than his 35 years, like he was carrying the weight of the world. When he looked at her again, he was torn between giving up and being impressed. "You're not going to back down on this, are you?" "No. Not even if I tell you it's the most reckless choice you could ever make?" She saw the hint of a smile as he shook his head. "Fine, but you will follow my orders to the letter. No improv, no heroics, you are not a pro, is that clear? Crystal? And if I give the order to run, you run. No looking back, no second thoughts, you just get the hell out. Deal?" Doubt flickered across Emily's face. Every part of her wanted to refuse, to promise she'd never leave him. But his eyes said this was the only way. The price of admission. "Deal," she finally said. Adrian put his phone to his ear. "Marco, come back and bring someone who can teach defensive tactics in the next 6 hours." The next 6 hours were the worst of Emily's entire life. The instructor Marco found was a woman named Sophia, a compact bundle of quiet deadliness who looked like she could end you without even blinking. She didn't even question the insane timeline for this crash course in survival. She just got started. They kicked things off with the basics, planting her feet, shifting her balance, and using an enemy's own momentum against them. Sophia was a total machine, offering zero praise, just nonstop corrections. Every time Emily ate Matt for the 10th time, there was no sympathy. Again, Sophia ordered, not even winded, while Emily was gasping for air. Someone grabs you from behind. What do you do? Emily scrambled to remember the moves. Drop your weight, turn into them, elbow strike. It was a mess. Too slow, Sophia snarked, deflecting the telegraphed move. You're basically announcing your attack. They'll see it coming a mile away and shut you down. You have to act like you're giving in, right up until the second you strike. Again. For 3 solid hours, this was her life. When Sophia finally called a break, Emily's body was just a masterpiece of pain. Bruises on top of bruises. But she could now instinctively break a hold, find the weak spot in a grip, and move in ways that might buy her a few precious seconds. She knew it wasn't enough, it would never be enough, but it was something. Just then, Adrian appeared at the doorway, his face a total blank. So, what's this? He asked Sophia. She's a quick study. She'll get wrecked in a real fight, but she might survive long enough to bolt. Sophia chucked a water bottle at Emily. Drill those escapes until they're muscle memory. And just like that, she was gone. Emily chugged half the bottle before facing Adrian. Be real with me. Am I just going to be a liability tomorrow? Honestly, yeah, most likely. He closed the distance between them in a few strides. But I'd rather have you where I can see you than be worrying if you're safe somewhere else. This way, if it all goes sideways, at least I'll know. That's not exactly comforting. It wasn't supposed to be. Adrian reached out, gently moving a stray piece of hair from her face. That move was getting familiar, a spark of intimacy that made Emily's heart pound, despite her entire body screaming in pain. Emily, you can still tap out. Stay here while we handle Calibra, and no one would blame you. I'd blame myself. Why? For being smart enough to dodge a bullet? Because I am so done watching from the sidelines while everyone else takes the risks. Emily set the bottle down, her eyes locking with his. My entire life has been about playing it safe, making choices that wouldn't make waves or get me noticed. And what did I get for it? An engagement to a guy who found me forgettable, a career where I was practically invisible, a home that felt more like a waiting room than an actual life. And you think running into this mess is going to fix that? I think choosing my own danger is way better than having safety forced on me by people who don't care what I actually want. Emily stepped even closer, so close she could feel the heat coming off him. You showed me this. You showed me I could be someone who takes up space, not someone who's constantly apologizing for existing. So don't you dare ask me to shrink back down just because it's the safer option. Adriana's hand came up to her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with an impossible gentleness that was a total mismatch for the storm brewing inside him. You're going to get yourself killed, he murmured. Not if you show me how to survive. I'm trying. You're not listening. Then make me listen. The air between them was electric, crackling with everything they weren't saying. Emily could see the war in his eyes, the protector who wanted her locked away versus the man who got why she was rebelling. The instinct to shove her away was fighting the urge to pull her in, and the urge won. Adrian closed that last inch between them, and his mouth crashed down on hers. There was no tenderness, none of the caution a first kiss should have, It was raw, a desperate claim that tasted like the beautiful violence he kept bottled up inside. Emily met his kiss with the same fire, her hands twisting in his shirt as her whole body lit up, like she'd been starving for this since the moment they met. When they finally broke for air, breathing hard, Adrian pressed his forehead against hers. "This is a massive mistake," he gasped. "Probably. You need to get out of here right now before this gets worse." A real laugh, not his usual cold, sharp sound, escaped him. Too late? Yeah, way too late. They hung in that delicate moment, stuck between who they were and who they were about to become. Then his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He pulled back, the professional mask sliding right back on as he checked the screen. "Marco has the final plan for tomorrow. We need to go over it." "Okay." A ghost of warmth was still on Emily's lips, her heart hammering against her ribs, but she forced herself to focus. "What do I need to know?" Turns out, she needed to know everything. For the next 2 hours, they stood in the war room while Marco laid out the op with terrifying precision. The warehouse on the east side was isolated enough to avoid collateral damage but had plenty of escape routes. Calabrizzi's shipment was due at 8. Marco's inside guy swore he'd be there personally to watch over it. Adrian's plan was brutally simple: surround the place, block every exit, and force a showdown on their terms. In a perfect world, Calabrizzi would see he's cornered and give up peacefully. In the real world, a firefight was pretty much guaranteed. Emily's job in all this was deceptively simple. Stay in the vehicle with Marco, keep out of sight, and do not, under any circumstances, get out of the car without a direct order. It was the compromise Adrian had insisted on. She could watch the storm, but she couldn't stand in it. Emily agreed, not like she had a choice, but a cold feeling settled in her stomach. No plan ever survives contact with the enemy. The rest of the night was a blur of tense prep as Adrian's crew showed up in silent waves, total strangers to Emily, all moving with a scary competence that only comes from years of practice. They checked their gear, confirmed tactical positions, and argued over backup plans for scenarios Emily didn't even want to imagine. Through it all, Adrian was the calm center of the storm, the master empire builder, now building a fortress of confidence. He was making them all believe this would work, that they could just stroll into Calabrizzi's turf and walk out without a scratch. Emily desperately wanted to believe him. As night fell, she was sent to Adrian's penthouse with strict orders to get some rest. She tried. In the guest room that now felt like a gilded cage, she shut her eyes and tried to quiet the chaos in her head. It was pointless. At midnight, she gave up and found Adrian in his office, buried in files, looking just as haunted by sleeplessness as she was. "Can't sleep?" he asked, not even looking up. "All I can think about is tomorrow. Welcome to the club." He put down the file he was reading and pointed to a chair. "What's on your mind?" "Everything and nothing." The kiss that was still hanging in the air between them. The fact that in less than 12 hours she'd be stuck in a car while the guy she was falling for walked toward a gun. The million ways this could all end in tragedy. "What if Calabrizzi won't surrender?" Emily whispered. "Then we make him. And if you can't..." Adrian's expression hardened. "Then he will not leave that warehouse breathing." The raw finality in his voice should have freaked her out, should have made her recoil, a reminder that this man was capable of a violence she couldn't even fathom. Instead, a deep sense of exhaustion washed over Emily. "Have you ever taken a life?" she asked quietly. Adrian's eyes locked with hers for a long, heavy second. Yes. How many? Does the number really matter? It might. He leaned back, his gaze turning analytical. I have killed 4 men. 3 of them were actively trying to kill me or someone I was protecting. The 4th was a guy who hurt a kid under my protection and thought his money would make it go away. His voice was clinical, totally flat. There's no joy in it, no pride, but I don't lose sleep over it. Their choices led them there, and I chose to end it. That's the world I live in. And tomorrow, if Calabrese pushes me, I will do what's necessary to protect my people, to protect you. And then I will move on, just like I always do. Emily took in his words, trying to square the man who'd kissed her just 6 hours ago with this person, calmly talking about killing someone. They should have been 2 different people, but they weren't. Adrienne was a walking contradiction, a protector and a predator, a teacher and an executioner, the man who saw her when nobody else did, and the man who could snuff out a life and not blink. And she was falling for every single piece of him. I don't know how to be someone who's okay with this, Emily confessed. You don't have to be okay with it. You just have to decide if you can live with it. Adrienne stood up, walked around the desk, and knelt in front of her, meeting her eyes. I told you this world breaks people, Emily. I wasn't being dramatic. If you stay, if you choose me, you choose all of me. The violence, the risk, the dark stuff that will haunt you. I can't promise it gets easier. I can only promise to be honest about the cost. What's the cost for you? The question seemed to throw him. His jaw tightened before he answered, his voice low. Everything I could have been if I'd chosen a different path. Everyone I might have loved if I'd lived a different life. His eyes found hers again. I was done mourning that guy ages ago. This is the real me. It's the only version that exists. Emily grabbed his hand, sliding her fingers between his. Then show me, she breathed. How to be the woman who can survive in your world without erasing the one I am in mine. He shot back. I don't even know if that's possible. She didn't miss a beat. We won't know if we don't even try. Adrian leaned in and kissed her, but this one was softer, hesitant, like he was trying to memorize her lips. He pulled back, resting his forehead against hers. Get some sleep, he muttered. Tomorrow's gonna be a long day. She asked, Will you stay with me? She could literally feel him tense up, his gut instinct screaming to pull back and put those walls up she'd just smashed through. But then something inside him broke. He let out a breath, his hand tightening on hers. Yeah, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I'll stay. And so they laid there in her guest room, fully clothed on top of the covers, his arm heavy around her as she rested on his chest. It was the most normal thing they'd ever done, and somehow the most intimate. There were no masks, just 2 people who crashed into each other at the worst possible time, trying to steal a moment of quiet before the war. Emily must have nodded off because she woke up to sunlight creeping in, and the spot next to her was cold. Adrienne was gone. A note was sitting on the nightstand with the same handwriting from his office. 7 p.m. Don't be late. She clutched the paper for a long time before finally getting up. The day dragged on at a snail's pace. Emily tried to eat something but could only get down some toast. She scrolled through her phone to distract herself, but her brain was a scrambled mess. By that evening, her nerves were so frayed she could feel a constant shaking. Marco pulled up at 6:30 in a blacked-out SUV. He didn't bother with greetings, just drove silently through the city toward the east side as the familiar streets bled into unknown territory. By the time they hit the warehouse district, the sun was going down, painting the sky in these nasty shades of orange and blood red. The building appeared ahead, a perfect match for the surveillance pics. Massive, industrial, and totally isolated by empty lots and chain-link fences. No lights were on inside, but Emily could spot the dark outlines of cars near the loading bay. Calabrizzi's crew was already there. Marco parked the SUV in a hidden spot behind some old ruins about 200 yards away. Their position gave them a clear shot at the entrance while they stayed hidden in the shadows. 2 other cars were already in place, Adrian's team waiting on his signal. "Where is Adrian?" Emily asked, her voice wound tight. "South entrance with Sophia and 3 others. Once Calabrizzi's shipment is inside, they're blocking all the exits." Marco handed her a small radio and an earpiece. "You can hear everything, but you do not talk unless someone is about to die. And you remember our deal. You stay in this car no matter what happens." With shaking hands, Emily put in the earpiece. The whole world just became a series of short, clipped voices. Adrian's quiet orders, people confirming their positions, the sound of a team prepping for a fight, and then his voice impossibly clear through the static. "Sound off." One by one, his people started checking in. Emily counted 8 different voices, not including Marco, a crew of 9 against the 10 or 12 guys Calabrizzi had. And that's not even counting any guards already inside. The numbers were bad. They were walking into this outnumbered. Just then, a pair of headlights cut through the darkness as a truck pulled up. It backed up to the loading dock with a skill that was frankly creepy. 6 guys came out of the warehouse and started unloading the truck's cargo. "We have eyes on the target," someone crackled on the comms. "Calabrizzi is coming out on the east side. He's got 3 guys with him." A drum started pounding in Emily's chest. This wasn't a plan anymore. This was real. On the comms, Adrian's voice was a rock of pure calm, total and absolute control. "Wait for my signal. Nobody even breathes until I give the word." The unloading went down smoothly. Calabrizzi was just standing there, watching, totally relaxed, like it was just another Tuesday night delivery. No reason to be worried, no sign of a trap. And then the whole world blew up. One of Calabrizzi's guys looked at his phone, his face went ghost white, and then he started screaming. Calabrizzi's head snapped around, his eyes scanning the darkness. He knew. Someone sold them out. "Abort!" Adrian's voice was like broken glass now. "Everyone, get out!" A gunshot ripped through the night. Emily couldn't see who shot first. She just saw the darkness explode in a storm of muzzle flashes and gunfire as everyone scattered into chaos. Through the windshield, she saw Adriana's team burst from cover, returning fire in a desperate attempt to regain control of a situation that was already foobar. Adrian himself was a phantom by the south entrance, moving with a terrifying grace, taking out targets she couldn't even see. Sophia was right there with him, watching his 6. Then a flood of Calabrizzi's men poured out of the building like they'd been waiting for this. Marco was already moving, slamming the SUV into drive. "We gotta go. Now." "What about Adrian?" "He'll make it. Our job is to get you out of here." "No." Her hand was already on the door handle. "I'm not leaving him." "Miss Carter, you gave your word. I know exactly what I promised." Emily shoved the door open and was out of the SUV before Marco could even try to stop her. She heard him cursing, shouting for her to get back, but she was already sprinting toward the warehouse, toward the firefight, toward Adrian. This was completely insane. A suicide mission? She was breaking every single rule he had given her. But she couldn't just drive away. She couldn't sit in a safe car while he was fighting for his life. She couldn't be the person who chose to save herself over the one person who meant everything. She barely made it 30 yards before someone snatched her from behind. Emily's training kicked in before her brain even knew what was happening. She dropped her center of gravity, just like Sophia had drilled into her, twisting against the guy's grip and ramming an elbow backward with everything she had. She felt it connect, heard a choked grunt, and suddenly she was free. She spun around, ready for more, only to freeze solid. She was looking at one of Calabrizzi's goons, a kid who looked younger than she expected, maybe in his mid-20s, holding a gun that was now aimed right at her heart. "Don't you move," he gasped, still hurting from her shot. In that second, every lesson from Sophia vanished. All that was left was the cold, hard metal of the gun. Her hands went up in surrender as her brain screamed one single horrifying thought. This is it. This is how I die. 30 seconds after making the dumbest decision of my life. Then Adrian's voice sliced through the chaos. Let her go. He appeared out of nowhere, moving with that same lethal speed she remembered from the wedding. His gun was locked, Di holding her, his whole body looking like a loaded spring of violence. But his face was different this time. It wasn't the cold calculation of a killer. What she saw in his eyes was pure, raw terror. "Back off, Moretti," the young guy threatened, his own voice shaking. "I'll shoot her. I'm not kidding." "You won't." Adrienne's voice was unnaturally calm. "Because the second you do, you stop existing. And unlike her, nobody's gonna miss you. You don't know that. I know you're Danny Russo. You started with Calabrizzi 8 months ago. I know your mother lives in Queens. And your sister just started at NYU. Adrienne took a single slow step closer. "I know that if you pull that trigger, their lives will never be safe again. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" Danny's aim started to shake. Emily could see the horror dawn on his face, the realization that he hadn't just grabbed some random girl, he had grabbed Adrian Moretti's entire world. "Let her walk to me," Adrian said, his voice low and dangerous. "You do that, and this night is over for you. You get in your car, you drive to your mom's house, and you tell her you're done. You find a new line of work, one that doesn't end with you bleeding out on the pavement because you made a bad call. Calabrizzi will kill me if I let her go. Calabrizzi is about to be way too busy saving his own skin to care about you. But I will care. I'll remember that you had a chance to be smart and you took it. That means something to me." The standoff lasted for maybe 10 seconds. For Emily, it felt like a whole lifetime. She could hear the fight raging around them, saw Adrienne's finger on the trigger, and felt her own heart hammering against her ribs. Then Danny lowered his gun. "Go," he whispered to Emily. She didn't need to be told twice. She crossed the distance in 3 wobbly steps, and Adrian immediately yanked her behind him, his gun still tracking Danny until he had disappeared back into the fight. "What in the hell were you thinking?" Adrienne's voice was a knife in the sudden quiet. "I couldn't leave you." "You were supposed to stay in the car." "I know." "You could have been killed." "I get it." Adrian grabbed her arm, his grip pure steel, and started dragging her to the SUV as Marco pulled up. "We're leaving, now." "But Calabrizzi is Marco's problem. You made your bed, Emily. Now lie in it." They were almost at the truck when Sophia's voice cut through the radio. Adrian, complication. Calabrese's bolting for the north exit. If he makes it to his car, I'm moving in. Adrian shut her down. Let him go. Boss, if he gets away, I said, let him go. Adrian shoved Emily at the SUV where Marco was waiting. Get her out of here. Take her to the penthouse and make sure she stays put until I get there. What about you? Emily asked. I'm finishing this. Adrian, wait! But he was already turning, heading back into the warehouse, back into the chaos she had just cranked up to 11. Emily tried to go after him, but Marco's arm shot out, blocking her. Don't, he said, his voice hard. You've done enough damage for one night. His words hit like a punch to the gut because they were true. Emily let Marco steer her into the SUV, her ears glued to the window as the gunfight swallowed Adrian whole, and she felt something inside her just shatter. The ride was dead silent, filled only with the ghost-like chatter from the comms. Emily could hear Adrian calling shots for his team, the cold confirmation of targets, positions, and escape routes. She heard Sophia's final report that Calabrese had hit his car and vanished. They'd lost, and the L was all hers. By the time they reached Adrian's building, the fight was over. The radio was dead. Marco pulled into the underground garage and cut the engine, but for a long beat, neither of them moved. Is he okay? Emily whispered. He'll live. He always does. Marco's answer was ice-cold and professional. But you need to understand something, Miss Carter. When you ran out there, you didn't just risk your own neck. You made Adrian choose between the mission and you. That's not fair to him, and it's sure as hell not fair to the people who depend on him to make the right call. I know. Do you? Because from my seat, it looks like you think this is some action movie, like the consequences aren't real. Marco turned to look her dead in the eye. Danny Russo could have put a bullet in you tonight. Adrian would have killed him for it, and then Danny's mother and sister would have paid the ultimate price, all because some paralegal from downtown decided she had something to prove. Tears burned the back of Emily's eyes. I didn't mean for... What you meant is worthless. Results are everything. You want this life? Then you accept that your choices create waves far bigger than you. They hit people you'll never meet, and sometimes they wreck lives. For a split second, Marco's hard expression cracked. Adrian cares about you way more than he should. But that doesn't give you the right to jam him into a corner because you're too stubborn to listen. He got out of the SUV without saying more. Emily sat alone in the quiet truck for what felt like an eternity, Marco's words playing on a loop in her head before she finally forced herself to move and follow him to the elevator. The penthouse felt like a massive cold tomb without Adrian. Emily went straight to her room, ditched her clothes, and stood under a scalding shower until her skin was raw. But no amount of scorching water could wash away the image of Danny's gun, or the sheer terror on Adrian's face when he appeared, or the impossible choice she had thrown at him. Wrapped in a towel, she was sitting on the edge of the bed when the front door clicked open. Emily threw on jeans and a t-shirt, nothing important, and walked into the living room. Adrian was standing there, looking like he'd aged a decade in the last 3 hours. His shirt was ripped. A smear of blood stained his sleeve, and she couldn't tell if it was his. His hands were trembling, almost invisibly, as he poured a drink. "Are you hurt?" Emily asked from the doorway. "No, the blood's not mine." He downed the glass in one go, then poured another. His team was secure, 3 were wounded. but they would all make it. Calabrese was in the wind, but his shipment was torched, his operation crippled. It would buy them 6 months of peace. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Are you?" Adrian turned, and his eyes held a dangerous glint. "Sorry you disobeyed me, or just sorry you got caught?" "Both. Neither, I don't know." She stepped further into the room, a giant rift opening between them. "I'm sorry for making things harder, for forcing you to choose. I'm sorry I blew you off, but I'd do it again." That wasn't a question. A lie was on the tip of Emily's tongue, a promise to be careful she knew she'd break. But Adrian had asked for honesty, and she was going to give it to him. "Probably," she admitted. "If I thought you were in real trouble and I could help, yeah, I would probably do it again." A harsh, bitter laugh escaped him. "You have no idea how to help Emily. You have 6 hours of self-defense training and a death wish. That's not enough to survive a shootout. It's only enough to get yourself killed and make me live with the failure." "I don't need you to protect me." "Yes, you do. That's the entire point of this arrangement. It's why you're here, because somebody tried to take me out and you became collateral damage. The only way to keep you alive is to keep you close." He slammed his glass down with enough force to shatter it. "But I can't keep you safe if you ignore basic commands. I can't be your shield if you keep charging at the fire just to prove a point. I'm not trying to prove anything." "Then what was tonight? Because from my view, it looked like you were trying to show you're tough enough for my world, strong enough to take the heat, that you're not the quiet, forgettable girl Nathaniel Ashford dumped." Adrian closed the distance between them, his stare burning a hole through her. "But you don't have to prove any of that to me, Emily. I already see you. I've known since you marched into the Crimson Lounge with that insane ring and asked for my help with something I should have ignored. You're brave and stubborn and so desperate to mean something that you'll put yourself in the line of fire just to show you can. And that terrifies me more than anything Calabrese could dream up." Tears finally streamed down Emily's face. "I don't know how to be any different." "I'm not asking you to be. I'm asking you to trust that you don't have to risk your life to earn your place here. You already belong. You belonged the moment you sat in my office and told me you knew what it was like to be written off. Then why does it feel like I have to prove it all the time?" "Because Nathaniel convinced you that you weren't enough, that being quiet was the same as being invisible. And now you're so desperate to be the opposite, you've swung to the other extreme." Adrian was right in front of her now, so close they were almost touching. "You don't have to be reckless to be incredible, Emily. You just have to be you." "And what if I'm not enough for this world?" "Then we figure that out together." He pulled her into his arms, crushing her against him so tightly she could feel his heart hammering. "But you don't get to kill yourself trying to fit into some fantasy version of this life. You don't get to throw yourself into the fire because you think it's what I want. What I need is you, alive. Everything else is a detail." Emily buried her face in his chest, the tears coming freely, for the terror she'd felt, for how badly things could have gone, for knowing that loving Adrian meant always walking a tightrope between who she was and who his world needed her to be. "I hate that I made it worse," she choked out. "You did, but you also saved yourself when Danny grabbed you. That elbow shot would have impressed Sophia." She felt his lips in her hair. "And you trusted me to get you out of it. That means something too. Even though I shouldn't have been there, They stood like that for a long time, wrapped up in the middle of Adrian's perfect living room. He finally pulled back just enough to look at her. "These are the new rules," he said. "You can be in this world. You can stand with me when things get hot, but you have to trust me when I tell you to stand down. You have to believe that me keeping you safe isn't the same as keeping you weak. Can you do that?" Emily really thought about it, about what it meant to be in Adrian's world and not lose herself, about finding the balance between being strong and being smart. "I can try," she said finally. "That's all I'm asking." Adrian kissed her then, a slow, deep kiss, as if he were memorizing her face. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead on hers, their signature move. "What now?" Emily asked. "With Calabrese. Now, he knows I'm willing to go to war over this, that I'll burn his operation to the ground piece by piece until he gives up or runs. He'll probably make contact in a few days to negotiate." Adrian's voice was all business. "He'll want a guarantee I won't come after him again. I'll want a guarantee that you're off limits. We'll find a middle ground and things will go back to normal before he decided to cross a line that should never be crossed." And that's the game. This is how they roll. You fight until someone taps out or both sides realize the cost is too damn high. Then you call a truce until the next guy gets ambitious. Emily tried to picture this life, a non-stop cycle of brawls and backroom deals built on a temporary peace she knew was a ticking time bomb. It should have sent her running. Instead, she was just bone-tired. "I don't know if I'm built for this," she admitted. "I get it. And if you bounce, I won't stop you. I'll make sure you're safe. I'll let Calabrese know you're not a bargaining chip. I'll make sure you get your old life back. No one looking over your shoulder." Adrian's voice was surprisingly soft. "But I really hope you stay." "Why?" "Because you remind me there's more to life than just surviving. Because you see past the violence. Because in 2 weeks you became someone I can't imagine living without." He pulled back, looking her straight in the eye. "I love you, Emily. And I know this is a messed up time to say it. But you wanted honesty, and that's the realest it gets." Emily's breath hitched. A piece of her already knew, but hearing him say it out loud just changed the entire game. "I love you too," she shot back. "And that's why this is so messed up. Loving you means buying into all of this. The danger, the sketchy moral lines, knowing guys like Danny Russo exist because of choices you made. I don't know if I can handle that weight." "You wouldn't have to handle it alone. But I'd still have to handle it. That's the price of being with you. I have to share the burden of your world, even the parts I don't want to see." Adrian went dead silent for a minute. Then he dropped a bombshell. "What if we played it differently?" "What are you talking about?" "I mean, what if I stepped back, put my trusted guys in charge of the daily chaos and got off the front lines? I can't just walk away completely. I've got too many responsibilities, too many people relying on me, but I could build a firewall, keep you away from the worst of it." Emily just stared at him. "You'd do that?" "I'd try. For you, I'd give it a shot." He held her face in his hands. "I can't promise I'll become some new guy. I can't promise there won't be more nights like this, but I can promise to build a life where they're the exception, not the rule, where you don't have to choose between loving me and losing who you are. And what if it doesn't work, if you can't step back? Then we'll figure it out together, just like everything else." Adrian's smile was all crooked, uncertain in a way she'd never seen. I don't have a playbook for this, Emily. I'm winging it here, same as you, but I know I want to try if you'll meet me halfway. Emily's mind flashed back to the woman she was 3 weeks ago. Small, invisible, thinking she was destined to be a ghost. She thought of the woman she was now, stronger, braver, still figuring out her limits but not scared to push them. And she saw the woman she could become if she stayed, if she picked this life, if she built something with a man who saw her when she was nothing and showed her how to be somebody. This wouldn't be simple. It would probably be the hardest thing she'd ever do. But standing there in Adrian's arms, his attention a solid force, Emily knew her choice was already locked in. Her choice was made the second she ran toward that warehouse, not away. "All right," she whispered. "Let's give it a shot." The insane wave of relief that hit Adrian's face nearly broke her. He kissed her again, a slower, deeper kind of promise, and Emily let herself fall into it, picturing a future they had to claw out of the wreckage. It was nothing like the fairy tale she wanted with Nathaniel, with zero safety or guarantees, but it would be theirs, and it would be real. And maybe that was all that mattered. The next 3 months were proof that you pay for everything worth having. Just like Adrienne called it, Calabrese hit them up 4 days after the showdown. The truce took 2 weeks of brutal negotiations, with more lawyers than a corporate takedown. But they finally got a deal. Calabrese kept his kingdom, Adrian kept his, and Emily was officially off the board as a playing piece. The agreement was documented, witnessed, and guaranteed by the fact they'd annihilate each other, a promise both sides believed for now. Adrian made good on his word to step back. He handed the day-to-day operations to Marco, brought in his top guys for the riskier plays, and started focusing on legit businesses you didn't need guns to protect. It was hardly a clean slate. Some nights he still got home wound up with a quiet rage. There were still hushed calls in Italian she knew not to ask about, but it was progress. Emily kept her promise too. She landed a new gig at a nonprofit for domestic abuse survivors, using her legal brain to help people the system had thrown away. It was way more intense than her old paralegal job and paid peanuts, but it felt real in a way filing motions never had. She was fighting for invisible people. She got them now, in a way she never could have before Adrian. She officially moved into the penthouse after 6 weeks. Claudia met this news with her usual Ice Queen professionalism, though Emily caught her smiling once after she survived a dinner party with Adrian's crew without having a panic attack. Maya stayed suspicious but loyal, and Emily loved her for it. She gave her best friend the PG version of the story. Met a man. It's moving fast. His career is messy, but we're figuring it out. Maya had taken one look at Emily's face when she said Adrian's name and stopped asking the tough questions. Some things are better left alone. The grandmother's ring stayed put in its velvet box on Emily's dresser. She tried to give it back to Adrian a few times, but he always shut it down. It was never about the ring, he'd told her the last time. Keep it. Give it to our daughter someday. That casual talk about a future with kids hit Emily like a ton of bricks. They hadn't talked about forever, not marriage or a family or anything past making it through the day. But now the idea was hanging in the air. 3 months after the warehouse, Emily was checking herself out in the mirror in what was now her room. Their room, really, even though Adrian kept his own space for nights when sleep wasn't happening. She was decked out in another dress Adrian had picked. This one, emerald green, getting ready for another high society thing she wanted no part of. But this time, it wasn't about proving anything. It was just a piece of the life she chose. Adrienne showed up in the doorway, already in a tux, looking ridiculously hot. "You ready?" he asked. Emily turned from the mirror. It was the mayor's fundraiser. If they ghosted, people would talk, and they had to care what people said now, because his legit work relied on staying friendly with the bigwigs. Adrienne crossed the room and pulled her into a hug. "But if you seriously can't stand it, we'll send our regrets and stay in." Emily considered it. She could call Maya, order takeout, and binge-watch trash TV with a guy who built an empire on fear, but looked at her like she was a diamond. It sounded way better than schmoozing with politicians, but she'd learned a huge lesson over the last 3 months. Sometimes the hard choice is the right one. Sometimes you just have to show up. "No, we should go," she said, "but you're buying me stupidly expensive wine for my troubles." Done. They were almost out when Emily stopped. "Adrienne." "Yes. Thank you for seeing me when I felt like a ghost, for showing me my own power, for loving me even when my terrible choices put us both in the line of fire." Adrienne hugged her again, wrapping his arms tight around her. "Thank you for being crazy enough to walk into my office with that ring, for being stubborn enough to stay when I tried to scare you off, for loving me in spite of all the things you know I've done." Emily stood on her toes, turned in his arms, and kissed him. When they stopped, she said, "We're a hot mess, aren't we?" "Completely," he agreed. "But we're our mess. I can live with that." "Good, because you're stuck with me." They left the penthouse as a unit, Adriana's hand resting on the small of Emily's back, heading to another night of playing Bart. This time, though, Emily wasn't faking it. She was exactly who she was meant to be, strong, stubborn, and still learning to live in a world that almost destroyed her. She had survived Nathaniel's betrayal. She had survived her own rock bottom. She had survived Adrienne Moretti's world and learned that the price of love was sometimes violence, sometimes fear, and sometimes choices that cost you sleep. But she also found out she was capable of way more than she ever imagined. So get this. Our girl Emily figures out that to really love someone, you gotta accept the whole package, even the parts that are kinda messed up. But first, she's gotta survive this ridiculously boring fundraiser. You've got politicians spitting lies they'll never keep, rich donors getting tax write-offs, and everyone faking like they're there to help. Emily lasts 2 hours before she needs to tap out. After ditching some city councilman who can't keep his hands to himself, she escapes to a terrace for some fresh air, but she's not alone. Emily Carter. She turns and boom, it's Nathaniel, her ex, looking slick, handsome, and completely dead behind the eyes. "Nathaniel," she says, zero emotion. "How's married life?" He's all, "Good. Fine, you know." Then he gets right in her business, looking all fake concerned. "I heard you're with Adrienne Moretti. Is that for real?" "It is," Emily fires back. He tries to warn her off, saying, "The guy has a reputation," and Emily just owns him. "I know his reputation. I know exactly who he is. And I chose him anyway. Kinda like how your wife chose you. Guess we all make our picks on what we can handle." Ouch. "But thanks for the concern," she says, turning to leave. Then, plot twist, she spins back around. "Actually, no, I don't appreciate it. You don't get to fake care now that I've leveled up. You don't get to trash my choices just because you disapprove of my guy. I'm happy, Nathaniel. For real happy, and if you can't get on board with that, Then at least be decent and leave me alone. She doesn't even wait for him to respond. She just walks back inside, finds Adrian, and slides her hand into his. He looks down at her, asking with his eyes. "Ready to go?" he murmurs. More than ready. They make their excuses and are out of there in 10 minutes. The ride to the penthouse is chill, with Emily's hand resting on Adrian's thigh while he drives. This is her town now, her life. "Nathaniel was there," she says as they hit the garage. "I know. Saw him watching you." "You bothered that he's my ex?" Adrian kills the engine and turns to her. "Should I be?" "I don't know. Some guys would be. I'm not some guys, and you're not with him. You're with me. End of story." Then he leans over the console and gives her a soft kiss. "Besides," he adds, "I think we both know you traded up." Emily lets out a real, deep laugh. "Yeah, I really did." Upstairs, they swap the fancy outfits for comfy clothes and chill on the couch with wine and Thai takeout. Adrian swears this place has the best pad see ew in the city. It's so normal and domestic, a total 180 from the violence that threw them together in the first place. But that's how building a life works. It's not all high-stakes drama, it's mostly just this. Quiet nights, good food, and the easy silence between two people who chose each other against all logic. "So I've been thinking," Adrian says, between bites of noodles, "about where we're headed, long term." He puts his food down, his eyes locked on hers. "I want you to be my wife." Emily's world just freezes. "What?" "Not right away, not next month or even next year, but when we're ready, I want to marry you. Build a life that's just ours. Have kids if you want. Build something that isn't based on fear or violence or any of the darkness I lived in before you. Look, Adrian, I know this is heavy, but you need to know when I see my future, you're always in it. And if that freaks you out, just say the word and I'll back off. But if even a tiny piece of you wants the same thing, I need to hear it." Emily puts her bowl down, her hands shaking a little. She thinks about the life she planned with Nathaniel. Safe, predictable, and soul-crushing. Then she pictures her life with Adrian, dangerous, crazy, and 100% real. She knows who she is now. "I want that too," she whispers. "I want to marry you. I want to build that life. I want all of it, especially the messed up parts." Adrian's smile was like the sun coming up. He pulls her onto his lap, and they get lost in a kiss while their dinner goes cold. "We're gonna make so many mistakes," he breathes against her lips. "Probably. We're gonna fight and scare the hell out of each other. Almost definitely. But we'll handle it all together." "Yes," Emily says, running her fingers through his hair. "Together." They don't set a date that night. No big plans, no logistics. They just soak in the promise of a future they get to build. 6 months later, Adrian proposes for real, not with his grandma's ring, but with something brand new, something that represented what they were building, not what they survived. Emily accepted. They got married a year later in a small ceremony with just their real crew. No politicians, no high society fakes, nobody they had to put on a show for. Just Marco and Sophia, Claudia and Maya, and the handful of people who became their actual family. It wasn't perfect, though. Emily still had nightmares about the warehouse and all the ways things could have gone wrong. Adrian still had that violent streak. He still made choices that Emily had to learn to live with, but they were always straight with each other. They fought when they needed to, apologized when they messed up, and kept on choosing each other, even when bailing would have been easier. 2 years into their marriage, Emily is in the nursery holding their daughter, Isabella. She's just floored by how much her life has changed. Adrian shows up at the door, looking totally wiped but incredibly happy. "Is she asleep?" he whispers. "Finally. I think she got your defiant personality." We're in deep trouble. He walks over and wraps his arms around them. "How are you?" Tired, sore, and totally obsessed with this tiny dictator who won't let me sleep. Emily looks up at him. "How are you?" "Terrified I'm gonna screw this up. Grateful you're here to stop me." Adrian kisses Isabella's head and then Emily's. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing something in me worth saving. For being brave enough to stay when I tried to push you away. For building all of this with me." His voice gets shaky. "For making me believe I could be more than what I was." Carefully, with a sleeping baby in her arms, Emily kisses him. "We saved each other. That's how we roll." They just stand there in the nursery, lit by a single dim lamp. And Emily thinks back to the ring she almost traded for her pride, to the guy who saw past her desperation and saw her strength, to all the insane choices that led her to this moment, to a life she couldn't have imagined. It wasn't the fairy tale she used to want. It was better. It was real. And 3 weeks later, Emily finds that velvet box on Isabella's dresser with a note from Adrian. For when she's old enough to understand what it means to choose her own destiny, and she just breaks down crying, knowing every single struggle was worth it, because they built something that couldn't be destroyed. They built something that belonged to them, their daughter, and the future they were making together. They built a home. And Emily Carter, who once felt invisible, who thought she was meant to be forgotten, stood in that home with the family she chose and finally felt 100% completely and utterly seen.
From a deeper perspective, Emily's story is not merely about romance or revenge. It is about identity after emotional erasure. Nathaniel did not just leave her, he trained her to believe that being gentle, quiet, and stable made her forgettable. In that sense, the breakup was not only a separation, it was a verdict. And the tragedy of many people is that they spend years living inside verdicts handed to them by those who lacked the wisdom to value them. Adrian enters the narrative as an unlikely mirror. He recognizes in Emily the psychology of underestimation because he himself has built an empire from the rage of never being dismissed again. Yet the story becomes richer when it reveals the cost of that philosophy. His power protects, but it also corrupts. His intensity awakens Emily, but it also draws her into a cycle of violence. In literary terms, he does not simply rescue her, he initiates her. The central life lesson is this: self-worth that depends on another person's recognition remains fragile, even when that recognition comes from someone powerful. Emily begins by wanting Nathaniel to regret losing her, then she moves toward wanting Adrian to choose her. But her real transformation happens only when she starts choosing herself, even in fear. There is also a broader theme here. The cycle of violence does not always begin with guns. Sometimes it begins with emotional diminishment. A cruel sentence, a polished rejection, a life lived under someone else's definition of value. These are softer forms of violence, but they still wound. Adrian's world externalizes violence with bullets and territory. Nathaniel's world disguises it with manners and political polish. Both worlds ask the same cruel question: who gets to matter? Emily's answer becomes the moral center of the story. She matters not because men fight for her, desire her, or fear losing her. She matters because she finally acts as if her inner life deserves authority. In that sense, the sapphire ring is symbolic. She first offers it as payment for borrowed dignity. By the end, dignity is no longer something she needs to trade for. The lesson is timeless. The deepest revenge is not being chosen back, it is becoming someone who no longer needs to audition for love.